Welcome, everyone, to Partner Up with Amy Carroll. As a communication coach, trainer, speaker, and author, I'm delighted to be your host and excited to bring you insights and ideas to help you solve your communication conundrums. This is the 50th episode of my show, Partner Up with Amy Carroll. If you want to find out more about me, what the show is about, feel free to listen to previous episodes on my website, carrollcoaching.com, or go directly to the voiceamerica.com business channel, download the app, or you can always tune in using your favorite podcast app. And you got to be sure to check out last week's show from August 6th. I spoke with my social media gal, Talitha V, and we dug deep into how to stay partner while in conflict with kids as well as in the business world. Today, my guest is Dan Mangena. Dan, welcome.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. Now, the first test is, did I pronounce your last name correctly?
You forgot again.
I did? I screwed up? Okay, you say it.
Do you know what it is? It's the E after the G.
Yeah.
We're trained to soften the G. So
right.
You're looking for Mangena. Even if you practice Mangena, you're going to revert back to default and go to Mangena, even if you practice Mangena. So
Mangena.
Yeah, it's Mangena.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll have at least two more opportunities to say it again. So
you'll get it. You'll get it. It's all good.
We're just hoping. So listeners, I want to give you a little background about Dan, and then I'm going to turn it over to him so he can expand on it, because it's fascinating to find out that Dan, as a receiver of a late and devastating diagnosis, Dream with Dan founder Dan Mangena is an expert in transforming real adversity into financial and personal opportunity. I think this is safe to say, Dan, you walk your talk.
Well, I do my best.
You might wobble sometimes like the rest of us.
Yeah, there's some wobbling sometimes.
And Dan leads by sharing this skill with entrepreneurs as a prolific author, and I do mean prolific, people. A public speaker, coach, a podcast host, Dan has a mission to enable you to choose an abundant, joyful, purpose-driven life. So Dan, I'd really love for you to start by sharing your backstory with listeners.
Sure. A friend of mine wrote an article recently. He's much more of a veteran, but he's a fellow writer for Entrepreneur magazine. And the article was called the Businessless Business Coach.
The Businessless Business Coach.
Business Coach.
Okay. There
was an article I read in another magazine that right now there are more business coaches than there are small business owners, or some ridiculous figure or other. I'm sure it was in one particular region or country or something, but there's this, especially with the pandemic and stuff, I'm a healer, I'm a this, I'm a that. And many people, I feel, do have something to contribute and do actually have something to offer. I think what really sets, for me personally, my journey, aside from many, is that I didn't come out and say, oh, what's a good way for me to go out and make some money? I'm going to go and be a coach or whatever. I ran away from this path. I ran away from it. I had no intention of doing it. I had a very successful business I built up from scratch, having made and lost £2 multi-million fortunes by the age of 23.
Holy
clawing my way back from that second loss. Yeah, clawing my way back from that second loss, going through the dark pits of, suicidal ideation after the second loss, and rebuilding my life from scratch. When I had rebuilt my life and built up my consulting business, I didn't want to throw it away. I didn't want to let that go and, I'm going to go and be a thought leader and share stuff. I'm like, I've built this thing from the rubble. And for the first time ever, it's sustainable. I've covered my bases. The mess ups that I've made before that meant that things were taken from me, I haven't made them here. I'm good. I fly first class on my own terms. I mean, I've literally got up in the morning and said, do you know what? I fancy going to New York and hanging out for a few days. Booked a first class flight and bid on a Virgin Atlantic that day to go and hang out. And I remember one time, my friend Ferk, he's a NYPD, I was like, dude, are you off today? He goes, yeah, I'm literally just, I've got my rest days coming up. Like, I'm going to like meet me at the airport at this time. I've literally hopped on a flight, got there, he's picked me up from the airport. We've gone to my hotel. I've had a shower, got changed, and we've gone out and had fun. That was my life. I had a tailor, I had several nice watches, and like I did things on my terms. I didn't choose this life. It literally chose me. Like the calling was so strong that I was literally pried from a life that I really did love to find one that I didn't even know I could love even more. So that's just to give some context to the fact that I'm not one of those people that came to be a coach because it was the way that I was going to have success. I already had success and went into a year, like 2018 was a year for me. Like I didn't really know what I was doing because I walked away from the business. I left a lot of money on the table, stuff unfinished. I packed up my house, having a very, very beautiful experience at a meditation retreat, left everything in my brother's garage and literally packed a backpack, a suitcase, a suit carrier, and went off on my own dime teaching my work around the world. It was only later that year when someone said to me, hey, Dan, if you have more abundance, you can actually touch more people's lives, that I then actually started looking at the business side of things. And, you know, we've been blessed. We built up a 6-figure business in 4.5 months, and now we do 6 figures a month.
Wow.
But that wasn't what I came to do. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. It, like you said, it was a calling. It, I'm going to guess, became a passion.
The thing is, so even my podcast, Do It With Dan, when I first, like the reason why Do It With Dan as a podcast name doesn't really feel that like, because everything's dream with my brand. I'm Dream with Dan, I'm Dreamer CEO, if it was Dreamer HQ. That's because initially the podcast was something I was going to do, a business podcast, and just having cool conversations around business. And I always look for the line of least resistance in order to get something happening. And so I was like, well, I've got this resource. I'd already got the branding done. I already had all the names and so on and so forth. I do it danpodcast.com. I'm like, hey, let's just do it, you know, and get it done. So I was passionate about, I don't do anything I'm not passionate about. I'm passionate about speaking. I love creating content. I do love speaking. I do love, you know, creating books. I love podcasting, absolutely love it. These passions have just become the medium for me to share something I'm also passionate about, which is people letting go of this illusion that abundance is not their birthright and falling into the traps of lack, fear, contraction, anxiety, and all the other nonsense that comes from being aligned with that illusion.
And something you said a moment ago was sort of like, you didn't quite say it this way though, choosing the path of least resistance. And I imagine you probably work with people who think that if they want to create an abundant life, they need to work hard and push and force. And like you, Dan, I'm a big advocate of, you know, if there's too much push or fight this way, choose another way, find another way.
100%. I mean, one of the principles that we teach now is something called money DNA. And one of the things I really love about this concept as it's continued to evolve is, I mean, look, for example, I'm about 5'9" and change, right? I didn't have to do anything to be 5'9" and change, right? And there's nothing I can really do to have tweaked the program for me to be that, you know, just that couple of inches taller and been 6 foot tall. My DNA said, hey, you're going to be 5'9" and change. My eyes are brown. There's nothing I could have done about that. That's just what unfolded. When we look at our financial situation, I've seen this time and time again with the thousands and thousands of people that we've got to share our work with. Their financial situation can always be backtracked, in my experience, to a set of archetypes, predispositions, just spaces of flow. And we've basically mapped out a series of tests, a series of investigations to see where someone's at. And invariably, we can connect that to where they end up being financially. When people are fighting, I find that they're generally out of alignment, out of sync with those natural dispositions, that DNA that's going to naturally unfold. The really cool thing about money DNA is that for the most part, a lot of those things can either be leveraged,
right,
or shifted and tweaked so that we can take what we are naturally and adapt it to where we'd like to be financially. And when that happens, we find that there's a lot more flow, especially when we start to bring in vibration alignment, the unconscious mind, our habits and behaviors to support it so that we're not pushing and hustling, we're allowing and experiencing.
Now Not pushing and hustling, allowing and experiencing. Yeah. I'd like us to go back to this a little bit later, because I feel like you have a lot you could reveal for listeners. So, feel free to guide us back that way.
Sure thing.
Though I was listening to one of your delightful podcast episodes, and you and your interviewee, your guest, you guys were sharing your favorite book list.
Yeah.
And I'd love to have you remind listeners what, your top 5 favorite books are, at least for at the moment, because I'm imagining they constantly shift and change.
So I'll just give the listeners a little bit of background to where that practice of having 5 books came from. Back in 2015 or 16, I'd say 15, a dear friend of mine, and he and I both avid book readers. I mean, I pretty much kept up with at least 3 books a month for the most part for many, many years. There was a period of time when I was actually consuming like 1 or 2 books a week. So I've read hundreds and hundreds of books over the years. But we were both like, well, do we want to be just people that read books and then don't do anything with them? How would it be for us to find a way for us to ensure that these books that we're reading actually make it into our lives? Because you can actually just end up with information overload, not even integrate or apply anything.
Yeah.
And so we came up with this idea that we would continue to read books that we love and consume and enjoy, but we'd always stay on top of not applying what we learn by keeping 5 that we regularly refer to as almost like our little mini library, like our Bibles. And having Asperger's, I need structure. And so I said, okay, well, I'm going to have 5 books for 5 areas. I should know what those 5 areas are. And that took me into an exploration that now has become the work that we do with the Ideal Life Blueprint, which we loop into what we do with abundance, because we then send people off to understand that, so that when we're going to create abundance, we know what we're creating abundance for. And so I had these 5 areas.
Say that whole thing again.
So when people are going after abundance,
yes,
we found that people are much more successful in creating abundance when they know what the abundance is for.
Got it.
So the Ideal Life Blueprint gives us a structure for us to look at what we want our abundance for, what life do we want to live in ideal terms. And it came from this practice of picking 5 areas that I then picked 5 books that supported me in living to the fullest. I then overlaid that with 5 role models, real or like from, fictional. And then 5 keywords, which I use as triggers for me to keep coming back to. So for right now, it's freedom, love, expansion, meaning, and pride. Those are my 5 words.
Freedom, love,
expansion, meaning, and pride.
Meaning and pride.
Pride. Mm-hmm.
Beautiful.
So those words for me trigger an expanded definition. Freedom, financial freedom, love, loving connections with my family and friends, expansion of my consciousness and of my being. Meaning is I'm always doing, saying, thinking things that have an overall expansive meaning that contributes. And pride, being proud of myself, honoring how I desire to show up in the world. So those are my 5 phrases, my 5 words. Each one of those 5 books, each one of those 5 areas has a book that for me is a textbook, a Bible for me at the moment. And as I continue to read and learn more, sometimes those switch out. I challenge that list every day. When I say them in the morning, when I'm getting up and doing my practice, I ask myself, do these still resonate? And sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't. Sometimes they change. Sometimes they change and change back. My role models, I meet new people. I learn new things about new people. Those sometimes change. But what doesn't change is me having 5 core areas that I explore, so that everything I'm doing with abundance, everything I'm doing with creating resources to support me living an ideal life, fit into 5 areas I can always remember, I can reel off, and it gives me true north in each of those. And that's where the books come from. So the books right now are The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace D. Wattles for financial freedom. For love, it's a book called Relating Revolution. It Takes One to Change by my friends Meenal and Chris Kelka. For expansion, it's The Power of Now, because I believe that expansion happens within the now. For meaning, it's The Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer. I just love the way that he surrendered into the flow of life and found depth there. And when it comes to pride, it's The Way of the Superior Man by David Dada. That book has changed a couple of times for that kind of, it was manhood at one point, it's been pride, it's been personal power. But those are my 5 right now. I make sure that I refer back to quotes that I've taken from them. I flick through my notes often. But those are my books. That's the backstory and how they actually link into abundance as I teach and share it with people.
Wow, that's fascinating. I'm so glad we went through that process. And what I
Mhm,
can feel is happening to me is I'm already in my mind thinking about what are my 5 categories.
mhm,
What's coming up just for the moment is joy.
mhm,
I'm going to use your word for expansion. It's like self-development, health.
mhm,
I'll have to think about the other two,
mhm,
though. I have some books that I can relate to them, though.
mhm,
I think I'm gonna think about that for a little bit longer to make sure that the book's associated. Though
mhm.
I also like the fact that you can switch books in and out. There's not,
Yeah, you
it's
can
not
switch
a
them in and out. Yeah. And when I'm reading, as I'm reading, like right now, I'm reading a book called The Four Seasons by a guy that I met in this beautiful community I've just joined called the 1 Degree Network, Lawrence Ford. And it's like there's some stuff in there that speaks to other things. So it's not that I reject other books or there can't be sections of another book. These just happen to be the books that currently most fully embody my word, my desired experience, and that box for me. Mm.
wow. Um, I have a question, something about, I understand that you have advice for people to stop meditating. Is that true? And if so, please expand.
This one always comes up, and this is actually, we're playing with that as a title for my next book. The principles that I'm going to break down now will be the book, but we're not sure how it's going to work in because we had some conversations with a pretty well-known publisher, and they were like, "Yeah, we love this idea, but this title was a bit too controversial."
Really?
Yeah, because people, they go to judge it before actually listening to what we've got to say about it, which is, for something to stop, it has to have been in motion. I
Mm.
didn't say don't meditate, I said stop. And that's because far too often I've seen that people have lost access to the power and beauty of everything that they've tapped into through their meditation stroke, spiritual stroke, mindful practice, and not actually carried it over. So, okay, great. You've got this clear vision that you've got in your meditation or this beautiful visualized, idea. So what? It exists in the ethers. It exists as a vibrational flow, exists as this experience. But so what? How is it going to become a part of your life if it just stays there? Okay, what's the next part? Well, we have to start looking at our mindset next. Does my mind actually leave me open and available to receive this? And then I have to look at, does my environment, do my habits and behaviors make me available to receive it? So the battle cry of stop meditating is meditate, yes. Do your yoga, yes. Do your chanting, go to the temple, go to the church, go to the mosque, go to the synagogue, do all the things, pray, all that yumminess. But then do the work of ensuring that your mindset actually allows you to receive the thing that you're praying for, the thing that you're intending, the thing that you're meditating on, and then set up an environment to actually receive it. Because it's all very well and good you asking God for a miracle, but if you don't believe that it's possible, you're not going to be able to see it. Physically, your reticular activating system will shut it off. And if you're not in position to receive that blessing, then that's on you. So it's really looking at this integrated approach to life, looking at this aligned approach to actually creating new outcomes in our life, and respecting the fact that spiritual practices, mindfulness practices are one part of an overall puzzle, a foundational part, a very powerful part, but for people to stop stopping there and start taking care of everything else.
So you might have to say no to this question, though I would love a concrete example. And because I might be asking for something that would just, it's too be oversimplified, though. I get it at a high level. I'd love to see if you can walk me through something
Okay, I'll
concrete
give you
that
two
blocks
basic
people.
examples.
Okay.
I'll give you a real one and then I'll give you an imagined one. I'm not going to
Okay.
tell you which one's which, but you'll
Oh,
probably work
good.
it out.
Yay.
Okay.
I love quizzes.
So I close my eyes. I imagine myself being a millionaire. I imagine myself winning the lottery, even, which for me, I think is like a manifestation. But I don't go and buy a lottery ticket. I'm saying the same prayer every morning. At the same time, I'm holding feelings of unworthiness. I don't even believe it's possible to win the lottery or to have abundance. I've got thoughts of money being the root of all evil, but I'm praying for my winning the lottery. But then all I do is sit around eating Cheetos and watching Netflix all day, not even going on my mobile device to buy a lottery ticket. What was the point? Is my situation going to change?
Okay.
I had a beautiful human that worked with me a couple of years ago. They actually invested I used to do more one-on-one coaching back then. And the program I did back then was a 12-week program. And we'd invariably see around week 9 or 10, there would be a big aha moment, a breakthrough. And that person had the breakthrough. They were literally going on a walk and they heard the gremlin voice that I speak about in that program that was running their life and holding them captive. And we had this massive breakthrough and things were about to change. Got to the end of the program, like, yes, I want this. This is amazing. Starts making changes. And then said they wanted to invest in like, taking a bit more time. And then about halfway through the extra time, spun around and said, do you know what? I've been reading the stories of some of the ancient yogis and, God provided everything they need. So I don't think I'm going to do any more coaching with you because I believe God's going to give me everything I need. Now, here's the thing. You look at these ancient yogis, Yogananda, all these. Did the divine provide everything for them? Yes, but most of them spent 20 years in the mountains learning to access that level of manifestation, right? They could pull things out of their hands, but they spent years. Do we want to stay in the mountain for 20 years? Or do we want to just click some things into alignment now and have it now? Does that make sense?
Perfect sense.
Mm-hmm.
Now you said you were going to give 2 examples. One was real.
I gave 2. Those are 2. I gave the lottery ticket and I gave the
okay, good. I wanted to make sure that I didn't miss one. Okay.
No, those are the 2.
Yeah. Really, it's, you got to take action.
Mm-hmm. And the action has to be in line with what we believe is possible for us. Mm-hmm.
What if someone has a block and they don't believe? How do you support them? They want to believe, though they don't.
Mm-hmm. So I end up knocking heads with a lot of people on the way that I approach things. Sometimes, like, some of my peers like, what did you say?
Me too.
And it's like,
I have yeah.
I can imagine. I don't actually advocate going and doing deep dive investigations into your limiting beliefs. Yep. I don't do it. Why? Because if I'm investigating limiting beliefs and I'm spending all my time focusing on limiting beliefs, I'm polluting my current mental environment with those limiting beliefs and the emotions and the chemicals and hormones in my body associated with it. But the other extreme of that is people just put their head in the sand and pretend everything's lovely. What I like to do is say, okay, we honor what is, and then start to move on what we'd like to create.
Nice.
Because even when we look at the neurochemistry of the brain, coherent brain frequencies will always consume incoherent brain frequencies. And it's not just brain frequencies, it's frequencies full stop. When we look at, I think it's Richard Dawkins, Richard Dawkins, Power versus Force, when he actually shows that different emotional states have got different frequencies. And if you look, what we call disempowering emotional states tend to have a quote unquote lower frequency. If I'm introducing a high frequency, it will actually literally consume the low frequency. So I have people bring in what we desire, hold it in a higher elevated state, and it will tend to consume and actually overwrite the other. We're not pretending that the other one's not there. No. We're holding it. We're having compassion. I love you. And this is where I'm going now.
Yeah. This is so last year.
Yeah. So I know we've got a break coming up, but I'd love to, when we've got a bit more time to dive into it, even give some strategies that the listeners can actually play with to actually create some change in a real way in quite a short period of time, using this approach of consuming the incoherent frequencies versus either pretending it's not there or obsessing over the limiting beliefs and actually just ending up giving them more life.
Yeah. Okay. Let's do that. And Dan, as you were speaking, it made me think of something I heard maybe when I was studying coaching, that we don't necessarily have to know the why something is what it is in order to fix it or change it. Maybe in some situations for some things, though, for most of the stuff, it's maybe fascinating for us. We're curious about it. Though once I realized that, wow, that just released me of so much. I don't have to know the why. I just have to know where I want to go. Yeah.
And the why can be a cool thing to look back on, right? I've had some mess ups in my life. I can look back at them now with a glass of wine in hand and, oh, look at that, blah, blah, blah. But, when we look at everything, when we stay present in the now and we look at what supports where I'd like to go now from now, what supports that? And then, okay, well, this from the past gives me some material that can support that. I can take the wisdom of that without the emotional charge, right? I can take that memory without the emotional charge and carry the wisdom from it and apply it now. I don't have to be in it in order to pull from it. If it doesn't have any space in the now, then I don't hold it in the now. And again, that's not pretending things didn't happen. It's not putting my head in the sand.
No.
It's moving forward expansively and just pulling on what serves me here and now.
Yeah. Yeah. So, let's pause for a moment here and we're going to take a break. Now, listeners, if you want to connect with Dan, find out more about him, go directly to his website, www.dreamwithdan.com. And just to whet your appetite, listeners, a little bit, here are the titles of his books, and there may be even more, and it sounds like there's a future one coming. The Money Game, Stepping Beyond Intention, The Dreamer's Manifesto, From Time to Time, Power Proximity. And I hope, Dan, that after the second half of the show, we'll get more into some of those.
Of course.
Okay, good. And listeners, if you're ready to take your superhero partner powers into the next decade, join me for my online leadership presence course. You can find the details on my website, carrollcoaching.com. When we come back, we're going to be hearing more from Dan. So stay tuned. You're listening to Partner Up with Amy Carroll on the Voice America Business Channel. Welcome back. My guest today is Dan Mangena. Oh, I'm so blocked, Mangena. Mangena. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah, the brain does that. It goes back to default.
Okay. So Dan, my friend Dan, is here. And so now, as Dan promised before the break, he's going to now take an opportunity to give us some strategies for handling those limiting beliefs that so many of us have. I'm not good enough. I can't do this. It's not possible. All that. Okay, Dan, go for it.
So I just want to pre-frame this. I think it's really powerful for us to remember that the mind isn't your enemy, it's your friend. It's a perfect executing machine that never fails at anything. When you remember that, you can stop beating yourself up. And it can also help you to implement more gratitude into your experience, because even when you create something that you don't want, it's the perfect execution of something that you did want at an unconscious level. The unconscious mind never fails. The thing is that the unconscious mind moves at 10,000 to 10 million times the speed of the conscious mind. Yeah. And so introducing a new set of instructions for it to succeed at is really what we're talking about. Limiting beliefs, that voice is a part of the current program. So rather than fighting the program, which just gives it more life, we just need to feed in a new program. So what language does it speak? It speaks in imprints, images, emotional imprint. So our emotional state has more of a say in changing limiting beliefs than us fighting our current ones or complaining about the ones that we, the beliefs that we don't have. So here's the hack. Instead of verbalizing it in words, look at the new belief that you want. How does it feel to have that new belief? And then pollute your environment with more and more inputs that are going to support you having that emotional state. The belief system will follow because your unconscious mind will start to program itself according to those inputs that it's getting. You then support that by conscious time being spent in habits and behaviors and curating a physical environment that again supports that new belief. We don't fight the old one. We simply support emotionally and with our physical actions and our environment, that new belief, and it will unfold by itself. You just find that it changes.
Got it. So let's use a concrete example about people wanting to have more financial freedom, stability, abundance.
Okay, so someone wants more financial stability and abundance, then the program has to support that. Okay, so there's a principle I teach about called alignment, which is, I know, something that you wanted to step to today. So this comes in here,
okay,
because alignment is basically looking at the fact that reality isn't one-dimensional. We have a physical body that moves through time and space. We have mental experience, right? A mental aspect of ourselves. That's our stories, our narratives, our beliefs, our ideas, our programs. The unconscious is sitting there and is the gatekeeper. And then we also have an emotional experience, which we know even the law acknowledges crimes of passion. It recognizes that when we're in particular emotional states, it can overwrite our ability to think a certain way. So we've got these three levels of experience. It's always following an instruction. when we look at what we get, particularly in, some corners of the quantum physics model, this idea that everything that is unfolding at any of these levels only unfolds and becomes a part of our physical experience because there's some kind of expectation or direction or instruction. Most of the time that's happening from our unconscious. Our unconscious mind is calling in those experiences that starts experience as an emotional field, which then starts unconscious thoughts, which then leads into unconscious habits and behaviors, which is where we spend most of our time. We're unconscious as much as 97% of the time.
Wow.
So we need to have a clear interjection. For me, an intention is intercepting or disrupting whatever the program is. That's how I define an intention. So we've got programs that we're running on. If I choose to disrupt that program and put, consciously throw something in the mix, that's an intention. Okay. That's why my book is called Stepping Beyond Intention, because beyond intention is getting to a point where I don't need to keep interceding because my unconscious program is doing what I want anyway.
It's picked it
That's
up.
the whole principle. That's the principle. So I'm propping in an intention. Obviously, if things were going the way that I wanted, I wouldn't need to change anything anyway. So I'm bringing in an intention. And then I need to understand what emotions do I cognitively connect to that intention.
Okay.
So when we're talking about financial freedom, for example, what are just 3 or 4 emotions? You don't need a laundry list, 3, 4, 5 at the maximum. It's just enough that you can remember and wheel off. What are 3 or 4 emotions that I cognitively connect to that experience? Why is it important that I cognitively connect? Because if I, for example, take your words, Amy, that's not going to resonate with my unconscious because I've got no cognitive connect. It's going to be this. And this is why a lot of people, I find, struggle with creating abundance, because even if they get this much, they're chasing after emotions that other people have told them that they should have. Oh, I should feel like that. Oh, maybe that will work. Rather than just consciously stepping up and saying, okay, when I hold a vision of me in that experience, what are 3 or 4 emotions that I'm having in that experience? There, cognitive connection set. So you can literally play in your mind with that images of that experience and see what emotions come up in the body. Now you've got a roadmap.
So let me reflect on that and see what comes up as you're speaking. And I'd be sitting with a situation where I'm imagining I'm fully financially abundant. What comes up for me is a sense of joy, because then I'm able to be generous with many other people in my life, who I know, who I don't know. I give to even more to associations, organizations that I think are doing important things in the world. And that's also the other emotion that comes up in that same time, is like pride, like, oh, I can really help contribute to the betterment of the world. Another thing that comes up is delight, because it means that I can have even more fun. Maybe I might be able to pay for my friend to take this exotic holiday with me, and we get to spend this quality, wonderful, joyful time together. Am I on the right track?
Exactly it. Exactly. You've got the roadmap now. The intention, this is the thing. I mean, you know this as much as I do. Communication is not about the words. It's about the energy behind the words. The words are just a medium of exchange. And that medium of exchange is only met by both people holding the same meaning attachment to those words. My wife's Russian American. If she starts speaking Russian, I'm not going to be able to connect fully. Sometimes when we have disagreements, it's because she's misunderstood, or I've misunderstood or miscommunicated a word between us, whether she's the wrong phrasing based on English not being a first language, or I've been too complicated speaking something to someone for whom English is not the first language. And then there's a disconnect, there's a breakdown. We're doing that all the time, communicating that new program to ourselves, because it's not in a language that we understand. Now that you've got that, you can actually start speaking that into yourself and start speaking it into your life. Here's where the magic is now. All that you have to do in order to shift the program at the unconscious level into abundance is to consistently keep up a series of inputs to the unconscious that supports that new narrative. Remember, the unconscious doesn't ignore your instruction. It just needs that instruction to be on a consistent basis. If you consistently speak joy, pride, delight, I think were 3 of the words. Was there another one?
I don't know if it was generosity or
generosity, for example.
Contribution. Yeah,
we'll use generosity because it's got a yumminess to it, right? As long as your mind is receiving those inputs on a regular basis, it has no other choice, because it doesn't have an analytical function, it just, okay, cool, we're doing it. It will start operating on that basis. But what often happens is we don't consistently make those inputs, and then we fail to support those inputs with what we've got in our physical environment. So, for example, you've got pride, you've got joy, you've got delight, you've got contribution. But then your physical environment speaks sadness, it speaks unworthiness, it speaks contraction and lack, it speaks sad. And so guess what happens? That conflict happens. And when there's a conflict, the unconscious mind just reverts back to default. Okay, there's a conflict here, forget it. We'll just go back to default. And so it doesn't click into place.
Yeah.
Whereas when you start to audit the people and places in your life, what are you listening to? What are you watching? What are you reading?
Right.
Where are you going? When you're conscious, what choices are you making about the things that you're saying to yourself? You know, at an extreme, an ex of mine, she would never let chipped or broken things happen in the house. Anything chipped or broken, it gets out of the house immediately, because for her, that's anchoring in her environment anything less than abundance. She doesn't do that. Wow. I look to do this in little things. Like when I catch myself making choices from a place of contraction, I pause and I lean into it rather than allow it. So what am I doing? I'm supporting that new narrative.
Yeah.
Our unconscious, our inner being, our vibrational flow, they are expansive and always moving forward. When we simply nudge it in the right direction and support that, it will naturally unfold. And for us, that's what alignment's all about: a clear intention, an emotional state that we're constantly inputting into our unconscious, keeping up inputs that supporting that narrative, and supporting all of that with an environment that's ready to receive it and to nurture it and to keep it expanding and flowing. Change has to happen under that basis.
That's really a rich explanation and clear. And now I'll share with you, about 2 hours ago, before I hopped on this call with you, I was out for a walk and a friend of mine said, "Oh, I'm at this cafe, stop by," and another friend is there. So I popped over and said hello for a few minutes. And this third friend, even though she's a lovely, kind person, there's something about her energy or her comments were joking, except constantly negative. And even just 15 minutes of sitting there, Dan, and I was like, oh, this is bringing me down. And so luckily I had an excuse to leave, and I made a clear decision in my mind. I don't want to spend time around that person. Even though she's a nice, kind, considerate person, it's not a good match for me. And I feel like my life and time is just too precious to be polite, you know? So I feel like that's an example
100%.
of what you're talking about.
100%. And I think we are invited to make some hard calls sometimes about what that means in terms of the commitment that we have to this new experience that we want for our lives. What are we prepared to drop from our environment in order to move into the new? And, you know, a big part of my journey has been, you know, allowing people to make the choice not to want to drop stuff and be okay with where they're at.
Yeah.
Because some people say that they want health, they say that they want more life, they say that they want more abundance, but then they're going to lose whole chunks of their identity that are tied to complaining about it. Yeah. And, you know, a lot of times people, they have that. You know, when we started, my signature program is called Micro to Millions.
Say it again.
Micro to Millions is my signature program. And it's all about taking these principles and also including something that we call microshifting to get from 0 to 1.6 million. And we've, you know, got a lot of people that have gone all the way to 1.6 million and beyond, but also a lot of people that stopped at a place where they were okay. You know, we've had people stop at as little as like 10, 15K. It's like, okay, well, I actually realize I don't need any more to live the life that I want to live. Or we've had people, I had one woman, she's like, do you know what? I realized how uncomfortable I am around the idea of being abundant because of this program. I'm not going to continue. But there's a freedom. And this is the thing. Some people might judge that, but I celebrate it because there's a freedom that comes from having the clarity to see,
absolutely,
this isn't even something that I'm ready to let go of my stories around, or this is somewhere where I'm okay holding the stories here, and kind of focusing my attention elsewhere. And doing that without judging ourselves and just being okay with that being our journey. But there's a lot of clarity that comes from just being able to look at things and answer that question, is this even part of what I want to let go of?
Yeah. And I also wonder if it's a process for people, because just because at this point in their life right now, they're not ready for it, it doesn't mean that in 6 months or a year, they're not going to be at a place like, okay, I'm feeling this, my boots now, I'm ready for it.
Yeah. And again, letting people have their own journey, allowing yourself to have your own journey, and putting yourself first in a loving way, loving, compassionate way, to say, hey, that person's journey, I respect it, but it doesn't really align with my journey and the inputs that I want in my environment.
Yeah. There's a phrase I remind myself a lot: work with people who want to work with you.
Yeah, I love that.
And this goes back to what we were talking about earlier about, if there's too much resistance, then my job is to find an easier path. And, you and I think we're both movers and shakers, and we're edgy and we're not for everyone. And that's okay. And so sometimes I have to remind myself, even though if I see someone in front of me and think, oh my gosh, his or her life will be so much more gratifying if they choose this upgrade in their communication skills, I've got to trust that they're making the right decision for themselves. If they choose,
I don't even go that far. I don't even go that far to trust that they're making the right decision for themselves. I trust that it's none of my business, unless they make it my business. You want to talk about abundance? Okay, cool. You want to listen to the podcast? Cool. You want to work with me? Okay. If you're ready, let's do this. But other than that, that's your journey. And I don't mean that from anything other than love and appreciation for everybody having their own journey wholly and completely.
Yeah. I have to, because sometimes I have a sense of, I like that because it puts my sense of arrogance in check to say, Amy, you don't know what's best for others.
My friend Mira Kelly wrote a book called Beyond Past Lives. Great book, sold like 20 million copies. Really great
Beyond
book.
Past Lives.
Beyond Past Lives. And there's a line in the book, and I always butcher the exact quote, but the meaning doesn't get lost even in my butchering. And it's, don't get mad when people in your life don't accept or live a spiritual path in this lifetime. They could have mastered spirituality in 1,000 lifetimes before and have come to see something else. And
you say it for me again.
Don't get mad when people don't follow the spiritual path in this life. They could have mastered it 1,000 lifetimes before and have now come to experience something different. Yeah. So I don't know what someone's interdimensional cross-life backstory is. I don't know. So it's not my place to judge from my limited perspective of humanness what the grand journey that they're on is, and try and force my wisdom or whatever on them. I'm here to hold space with and for those who want to work with me, like you said.
Cool. Yeah, because that's where the flow is. That's where the fun is, the energy, the joy. Yeah. Dan, you mentioned the term microshifting a few minutes ago.
Yes.
Although I don't think you went into any detail.
Yeah.
Would you expand on that?
I'll ask you a quick question. If I gave you $500,000 right now, $500,000 cold cash, told you exactly how to turn $500,000 into $1 million, number one, waved a magic wand and cleared any limiting beliefs that you had around having $1 million, and waved another magic wand and cleared any trauma or energy blocks to having $1 million.
This is a great wand, man.
Could you get to $1 million?
Yes.
Right. Did you know that if you take $100 and double it 14 times, you get 1.6 million?
I did not. Holy smokes.
Yeah. So it's actually 14 steps. Even if you took one step every 2 months, and invariably, in my experience, nobody really does one step at a time. Generally, it'll be 2 or 3 steps, 1.5 steps, 1 step, 3 steps, 2 steps, right? Whatever. So we've had people do that journey with us in 10 months. Okay. That's what we do with microtableers. Now, why does this work? Because invariably, people don't have money blocks in a general sense. They've got a money block at a particular point.
Okay.
There's not some overarching general, I am limited in totality. It's, I have a block at this point. And the reason why generally people have a block at that point is because their experience only leads them up to the known at a certain point, and then we step into the unknown, at which point the unconscious is like, we don't know what's going on here, so we're going to shut down to keep you safe. And so what we do is we teach people to baby step through the process, through those stages of different amounts of money, so we can get to the point of where the block is. But generally speaking, nobody's block is at $100. People don't have a block at $1,000. Normally the block is maybe 10, maybe 20, maybe 50. Most grown-ups have saved for a deposit for a house. A lot of parents have saved for a college fund. So they've experienced money at a certain level. We call that the hard edge. But when you make those baby steps through, number one, there's no resistance. Number two, you build a momentum. Number three, you get to actually feel and experience a succession of wins that supports you vibrationally in your emotional state, having confidence, feeling that worthiness. And we practice celebration at each of these steps too. Feeling that worthiness, feel that joy, feeling that celebration, so that when you do eventually get to the block, there isn't the same charge around it, because guess what? The unconscious mind has a momentum of wins. The unconscious mind has a momentum of success. The unconscious mind has a momentum of gratitude and all the good things. So even if there are still some blocks there, you've also now got a much stronger charge of momentum that will combat at least away from a full stop. There will still be some work to do, but it's no longer full stop, procrastinate, self-sabotage scenario. It might be, this is uncomfortable. I don't know, but I'm ready to step in and lean in and know. And that's how the system works. So microshifting is something you can apply to anything. We say push your edge, but not your buttons. Go into where your limits are and nudge them forward by building momentum leading into it, so that when you get there, it's not some crazy, oh my God, it's okay, let's lean into that, and push the edge on it.
It's not as scary when you're up close to it as when you're first starting. That makes sense. Dan, you say we always have a choice. And this is a philosophy I share as well, though I really like to hear more about your thinking behind this. And maybe
the choice isn't always conscious. The choice isn't always conscious. A lot of the time it's unconscious. We're operating at the unconscious as much as 97% of the time. And again, 10,000 to 10 million times the speed of the conscious mind. But whilst we are consciously aware, we do have the opportunity to start disrupting and changing what those unconscious programs are, and therefore leading to experiences that we actually desire. So we always have a choice. It isn't always conscious, but we do always have the opportunity, whilst we are conscious, to adjust that unconscious program so that it does support more of what we consciously choose.
Okay, I get it. And your brain works faster than mine, or maybe because we have a 7 hour.
I love just watching
change.
You just noodle on it, like oh yeah, click and see the click.
And so, Dan, we're starting to move towards the end of the program, and I want to open it up to you to see if there's anything else in particular you would like to share that we haven't explored yet today.
Just really the importance of having fun, right? Because we can get lost in all of this. Oh my God, I didn't have my notepad. I need to go back and listen on the notepad. Oh God, I missed something. What did he say? What did she say? Blah, blah, blah. Don't take it so seriously. We're not getting out of this thing called life alive. Stop taking it
that's so what seriously. I heard.
It's like none of us are getting it. It was like, so just have fun with this. The more fun you're having with it. I mean, try and be peed off and smile at the same time, or laugh at the same time. Very, very challenging.
Very challenging.
Right?
Yes.
So the more that your inputs, the more that your environment is supporting you being more uplifted, then the greater, a more conducive space you're going to be in to create some of these changes anyway. Just find something that you can take from this. You may not be able to take everything that, Amy and I said here. Find one thing that you can implement. Then maybe come back and find something else. Maybe that's going to lead you to something else. But just take one thing and apply it on a consistent basis, and change must come.
I want to reinforce that importance of fun. One of the things I so enjoyed listening to your podcast is how much you love to laugh and play, and, and I was like, oh man, this guy, I'm so aligned with that. And I will share with you that I did a test years ago when I started my business around my values, and my top 2 values were fun and play. And Dan, I was horrified. Well, I thought, oh my God, listen to this sentence. How will I ever make money if all I want to do is have fun and play?
But generally speaking, the people that are doing the best are doing something that they're really excited about. It may not be something that we understand, but it's something that they're excited about, something that actually lights them up. Maybe not what lights most people up, but it's what lights them up. And that's why they win at life.
That matters. Yeah. So, Dan, I want to share my final call for action. Well, I have two for people. Listeners, feel free to send me your communication conundrums, clashes, challenges, mishaps, blunders, and successes. You can do that via email or social media, and I will be discussing them on future shows, perhaps making suggestions or even learning from your own successes. And you can reach me at amy@carrollcoaching.com. That's 2 R's, 2 L's. And my second call for action is really check out Dan's, first of all, his podcast, dreamwithdan.com. You can find all of this stuff on his website, and especially his book, The Money Game. Dan, do you have anything else you'd like to add in 30 seconds or less?
Yeah, we actually just made Money Game available for $1. So if you head to dreamwithdan.com/money game, you can actually get the ebook for $1 right now. So go and grab that. dreamwithdan.com/money game.
Okay, great. And listeners, be sure to switch on, tune in, listen up, and be inspired next week when I will be chatting with Ellie Von Planta. We'll be talking about the 3 dimensions of leadership in the family, in the military, and in corporations. And along with the basic needs we all have for these dimensions to function effectively. Now, you can check out my website for more information, carrollcoaching.com, or connect with me on social media, Amy Carroll Coaching. And if you're game for more, I'm going to be hopping over to Facebook Live for 5 minutes past the hour today for a short chat on my call, my discussion, my chat with Dan. And Dan, thank you so much. This has been absolutely delightful.
Thank you for having me.
Listeners, thanks for tuning in. You've been listening to Partner Up with Amy Carroll on the Voice America Business Channel. And happy partnering, everyone.